Hello everyone. Today we will learn about a sentence. First of all, we will discuss the question, what is a sentence? Let's have a look at this section with group of words. Do you think that these group of words are called sentences? No, these are not called sentences. But why we don't call them sentences? Because these group of words do not provide us a complete thought. There is something missing in them. Now, let's look at another section. Do you think these are sentences? Yes, these are sentences because these sentences provide us a complete thought. To continue with our learning about what is a sentence, let's have a look at various parts of speech it consists of. Let's look at an example. In this example, we see there is a subject and a predicate. Predicate means a verb, an action. It begins with a capital letter and ends with a period. So, for a sentence, we need a subject and a predicate. Now, let's look at another example here. Josh played soccer yesterday. Do you think that this is a sentence? In order to prove that this is a sentence, we need to answer two questions. Ask yourself if these group of words answer the two questions needed for a complete sentence. The first question is, who is the sentence about? The answer to this question is, the sentence is about Josh. So Josh is a subject of this sentence. The second question is, what did he do? To answer this question, we have he played soccer. So played is a predicate of this sentence. Thus, if we can answer two questions, so this is a complete sentence. So now we know for a sentence, we need a subject and a predicate. Let's look at the definition of a simple sentence. A simple sentence has only one or independent clause and no subordinate or dependent clause. A simple sentence is also called independent clause. It contains a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Let's look at this section. In this section, we see simple sentences with a subject and a predicate. They are independent sentences because they provide us a complete thought. Let's look at another section. In this section, we have simple sentences with an adverb, a direct object, and an indirect object. So, for a sentence, the subject and predicate is needed. It should also provide us a complete thought. After learning about a simple sentence, it's time to learn about a compound sentence. So let's learn about a compound sentence now. First of all, let's look at the definition of a compound sentence. A compound sentence contains two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. Both the independent clauses contain a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. We have coordinating conjunctions for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Now let's have a look at this sentence. I drink tea, but they drink coffee. Now look at the first part of the sentence. In the first part, the sentence has a subject and a predicate. So the clause can stand on its own. Then we have a coordinating conjunction but to combine the first sentence with the second sentence. In the second part, the sentence has a subject and a predicate. So the clause can stand on its own. So we have just learned that a compound sentence has two simple sentences combined with the help of a coordinating conjunction. Let's continue our learning about a compound sentence. We have already discussed the definition of a compound sentence. We have already discussed about the coordinating conjunctions. I'm going to show you two different examples. In the first example, we will have a look at a compound predicate where we do not use comma. The second example is an example of a compound sentence where we use comma. Let's get started. Let's have a look at the first example. The cat chased the mouse and caught it. This is an example of a compound predicate. The first part of the sentence is an independent clause as it has its own subject and a predicate, and it gives us a complete meaning. It has a complete thought. There is no comma used before a coordinating conjunction and. The second part of the sentence, caught it. These words can't stand alone as a sentence. It has a missing subject. So this is a good example of a compound predicate. That's why we haven't used comma. In this sentence, we have combined two predicates, chased and caught. Let's have a look at another example. The cat chased the mouse, comma, and she caught it. The first part of the sentence is an independent clause since it has its own subject and a predicate, and it gives us a complete meaning, complete thought. And then we have used and as a coordinating conjunction. The second part of the sentence is also an independent clause since it has its own subject and a predicate, and it gives us a complete thought. This is an example of a compound sentence with a comma. After learning about simple and compound sentence, it's time to learn about a complex sentence. Let's have a look at the definition of a complex sentence. A complex sentence is composed of one or more dependent clauses and one independent clause. A dependent clause is also known as a subordinate clause. An independent clause stands on its own, as it has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Dependent clause can't stand on its own as a complete sentence. It depends on other clauses to express a complete thought. Dependent clause begins with subordinating conjunction. These are some of the subordinating conjunctions: after, before, when, while, because, even though, if, although, since, whenever, however. Let's have an example. I washed my car after I came home. The first part of the sentence is an independent clause. Why? Because this sentence has a subject and a predicate, and it also provides us a complete thought. It can stand on its own as it gives us the complete meaning. Then we have after as a subordinating conjunction. The second part of the sentence is a dependent clause. This clause cannot stand on its own as a standalone sentence because it does not express a complete thought, though it has its own subject and a predicate. If we just read this part, the second part of a sentence, after I came home, does it make any sense? Does it give you a complete thought? No. It needs something to complete its meaning. It has something missing, which is an independent clause. When we combine this dependent clause with the independent clause, it gives us a complete thought. So by now, we know what is a complex sentence. We have already discussed about the definition of a complex sentence. We have already discussed about some of the subordinating conjunctions. Now it's time to learn about the two different ways that we can write a complex sentence. Let's look at the first way. I washed my car after I came home. There is no comma in between. The first part of the sentence is called independent clause, since it has its subject and predicate. It also provides us a complete thought. And then we have a subordinating conjunction after. The second part of the sentence is a dependent clause. It has its subject and a predicate, but it does not express a complete thought. When we write independent clause as the first part of a sentence and dependent clause as a second part of a sentence, we do not need a comma. Now let's look at another example. If you don't try, comma, you will lose. Have you noticed the difference between the first sentence and the second sentence? Yes, you're right. In the first sentence, we have an independent clause as a first part of the sentence. In the second sentence, we have a dependent clause as a first part of a sentence. If is a subordinating conjunction. If you don't try is a dependent clause. And there is a comma after that. And then as a second part of a sentence is an independent clause. So when we write a dependent clause as a first part of the sentence, we use comma. And when we write independent clause as a first part of a sentence, we do not use comma. So that's a difference in these two ways. Let's end up our session by discussing the difference between compound and complex sentence. Complex sentence has only one independent clause. It can have one or more subordinate clauses. Compound sentence has two independent clauses. That means we have two simple sentences, or we can say two independent clauses are combined with the help of coordinating conjunction. Thus, we have learned about simple, compound, and complex sentences. Thank you.